Tomorrow, Minister of Public Works Dean Macpherson will oversee the lower uMkhomazi bulk water supply scheme in eThekwini, KwaZulu-Natal. Now, this project is supported by Infrastructure South Africa. It's valued at over 20 billion rand and will provide water to around 50,000 households in the eThekwini and Ugu District Municipalities. For more, we're now joined by the Chief Directorate of Communications at the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, James de Villiers. A very good evening to you, James. Thank you so much for your time. How can we, just after listening to Minister Phemi Majodina, how can we, the viewer, discern now when in one day a Minister of Water and Sanitation speaks about water issues and on the same day there's an announcement about a Public Works Minister inspecting a water scheme? Is this part of the workings of the GNU or is it normal procedure?
It's definitely normal procedure. You'll bear in mind that the water projects being mentioned are in two different parts of the country, and the former water minister actually visited the same dam in May this year. But the reason why the Public Works Minister is visiting tomorrow is because this project is one of the strategic projects in South Africa, gazetted in the Gazette, and also supported by Infrastructure South Africa. And what the minister is really trying to show South Africans is how his department and how Infrastructure South Africa is unlocking investment, public sector investment, to really improve the lives of all South Africans.
So what role will Minister Dean Macpherson be playing in this regard?
Well, the minister is going for an oversight visit tomorrow as part of it. This is the CIP Project 19, one of those 50 projects that was gazetted earlier last year to be strategic for the intent of South Africa to unlock infrastructure investment. And the reason why the minister is visiting it is because Infrastructure South Africa is playing a key role to unlocking red tape and bureaucracy to make sure that the project goes ahead. There were some delays at the start of the project, but since Infrastructure South Africa has been involved, delays have been eliminated and the project is going full steam ahead.
As you talk about this, we know that Minister Dean Macpherson has been speaking about efforts to eradicate lawlessness of construction sites across the country, all in efforts to address the growing occurrence of the so-called construction mafia at development projects. Talk to us about that collaboration.
Yeah, so actually earlier today, the minister now welcomed the move by the city of Cape Town and the private sector to start working together to address the construction mafia operating in the Western Cape. And the minister really believes that the only way we're going to restore the rule of law at infrastructure projects across the country is if we work together with the private sector. If we work with the private sector to identify these elements of criminality, and they also with the law enforcement agencies to identify these criminal elements, we'll be able to restore the rule of law at these construction sites. We know that KZN is uniquely affected by this issue, and therefore that is also why the minister will be meeting with the newly elected eThekwini mayor later this month to see how they could work together to address this issue operating in the province.
Yeah, I was actually going to touch on KZN because we know that the issue of construction mafias is widespread across the country, but particularly pronounced in KwaZulu-Natal, where Infrastructure MEC Martin Meyer, who has also taken a very bold stance in his approach in dealing with the construction mafia at development projects. We understand that he's also had received a number of threats made against him. How much information do you know about that?
Yeah, we obviously can't disclose all of that information because we don't want to jeopardize the role players at play. But Dean Macpherson, the minister, has been clear from day one that he will take a zero-tolerance approach to any elements of criminality operating in the country, and also will not be negotiating with those role players in the construction industry. We don't believe we don't believe in negotiating with criminals. We believe that the rule of law should be restored, and that's why we also welcome the efforts by the MEC of Public Works in the province to make sure that there's a hardline approach against these elements, rooting them out both in the public and the private sector.
James, the reason I ask you this, because as far as I know, what has happened is not a secret. It has been disclosed through other media platforms. So I ask you about, just whether or not the threats are true and valid if he has received them.
Look, the minister has been in touch with the MEC on a frequent basis because they obviously work closely together because of their portfolios. And as far we are aware, these threats are true and these elements of criminality are obviously true in operating in the province, as you've seen with the various level of media reports. But as the MEC has said, we're not going to be scared, we're not going to be intimidated, but we're going to go resolute in ensuring that public sector investment is not delayed and that the people can benefit from that investment taking place.
I know that the minister's also been in discussion with the City of Tshwane Mayor, having met with him last month. Who else will be joining forces with his efforts to root out the construction mafia?
Yeah, the minister made a public invitation to all mayors of all metropolitans across the country to meet with him to discuss how we could be working together to restore the rule of law, but also unlock public investments in the respective cities. This far, he's been starting to engage with the mayor of Cape Town, the mayor of eThekwini, and the mayor of Tshwane, and looking forward to engage in other cities as the time goes by. He's only been in office 4 weeks last week, so there's obviously a limited time that has been taken place, but as time unfolds, we look forward to be meeting with all role players to see how we can work together. With the mayor of Tshwane in particularly, he spoke about abandoned and hijacked buildings that's in the city of Tshwane. We visited the Telkom headquarters of former Telkom headquarters in the CBD last week that was hijacked, where public property was carried away, and over 250 million was spent in renovations. But to date, these buildings can still not be occupied, and the minister really wants to work with all role players to ensure that we root out this kind of wasteful investment and ensure that public facilities are used for public good.
And we have seen that the minister's been quite busy with the community strategies and partnerships, and of course looking at the parliamentary precinct and the building being burned. What exactly is his plan as we look over the next few days, perhaps 100 days, in terms of achievement and what he aims to really get a grasp of?
The minister said clearly that, unfortunately, we're operating in a physically constrained environment. 700 million was cut from his budget in the current financial year because of situations that Africa finds himself in, and therefore he believes that the only way to really unlock public sector investment and infrastructure investment is by partnering with the private sector, where buildings have been abandoned or hijacked, partnering with the private sector to help and renovate those buildings so that we can start spending more money on police stations, on hospitals, on schools that currently are being spent on trying to protect and maintain buildings which is being hijacked across the country. He also wants to see public buildings being used for being income generating, thereby ensuring that the department starts generating income, which then can be used for underserved communities and rural communities across the country. There is not enough money in the current budget to maintain and service all the buildings in the country, and therefore he is adamant that we have to be partnering with the private sector in this regard.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. Let's perhaps leave it there, hoping to get the minister to speak to us next time, James. That was Chief Directorate of Communications at the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, James de Villiers.